Welcome to the Ad Nauseum podcast, where classical gourmands everywhere can finally get their fill. Join us for a delectable discussion of Greco-Roman civilization stretching from the Minoans and Mycenaeans through the Renaissance and right down to the present. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here are your hosts, Dr. David Noe and Dr. Jeff Winkle.
Welcome, listeners, to episode 182 of the podcast. My name, as always, is Dr. David C. Noe. I am down here in the bunker, Vomitorium Central, with my good friend and fabulous co-host, the Dr. Jeffrey T., as in tremendous Winkle.
Oh, thank you. High praise.
You're welcome.
Didn't just get the doctor, I got the doctor.
The Dr. Jeffrey T. Winkle.
Yeah. Always good to be here.
Yes.
Yeah. Getting over a cold.
Oh, no.
My voice might sound a little smarchy to the audience.
You've been blue booking it, haven't you?
Blue booking it. Just finally underneath the pile of this semester. And
so what's your favorite method of grading? We have many teachers, that listen to this podcast, and they probably take the old ladder method, right? Just throw them on the stairs, and wherever they land, that's the grade that is assigned. Is that what you do?
I do not do that. Not that. Mine's more of a wheel that I spin.
Okay.
Yeah, in that whatever grade pops up, that's what I mark down.
Like Peggy Hill, spin the choice?
Spin the choice, exactly.
Combining the best of all possible game shows.
Yeah.
So what are you grading these days?
It's handwritten in-class essays and papers.
Okay, but so, I mean, how are the students going to use AI to complete their work if you make them write them by hand in class?
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Right? Yeah, right. So until they can bring in some kind of device that will write by hand and use AI at the same time, which is probably coming.
Oh, I'm sure.
Right.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I have. The software we use has an AI detector.
Oh, nice.
But I mean, there's also lots of questions on how reliable that is.
Right.
And so all the papers, they submit them all online, and they are filtered through the detector. And so every time I open one up, there's a little gauge there that tells me, how much of it is probably AI.
Right. So when you mention AI detector, it reminds me of something that students used to say when I would give them different kinds of assignments.
Yeah.
They'd say, Dr. Noe, I can't do that because I'm an auditory learner. Or I'm a visual learner.
Yes.
Do you get that kind of thing too?
A little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe it's faded in popularity a little bit.
Right.
My response usually would be, what if you're an olfactory learner? Let's bring in the other senses. Smells like philosophy. You're detecting something.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, it's been a while since I've had a student, kind of complain about a written assignment because I always in class I am personally a visual learner.
There's no such thing, but go ahead.
That's I take in information I think the most effectively that way,
like the rest of us.
But I will say to a class that doesn't preclude other styles of learning, right? That doesn't mean I'm going to provide a visual or auditory assignment for X, Y, and Z. Yeah,
all right,
exactly.
Well, speaking of visual kinds of learning, so you didn't ask how I'm doing, but I'm doing okay. Got back from some travel.
Yeah,
I got to tell you, Jeff, we are popular in the Carolinas.
Really?
Yes,
we're huge in the Carolinas.
I wouldn't say huge, but so I was down in Charlotte, North Carolina, and then went down to Greenville, as they say, South Carolina. Some great fans of the podcast down there.
Nice.
We'll give them some shout outs in the future.
Fantastic.
Because we have another one queued up for today. But first, I wanted to ask, I recently encountered an individual named Ryan, who is a tattoo artist. I think this is the first tattoo artist with whom I have kind of an extended acquaintance.
Okay.
And I'm just wondering, how does this work? Because do you remember that old show in the late 70s, early 80s, where the individuals flew to a remote tropical location? And Fantasy Island. Do you remember that show?
Of course, yes.
Yeah. So who is that fellow? How do I say his name? The Frenchman. Right?
Yeah. Are you thinking of Hervé Villechaize?
Yes. Hervé Jean-Pierre Villechaize.
Yes.
Right. Probably friends with Marc Roux.
Probably, certainly. Yes.
Yeah. And so I'm just thinking, the tattoo artist, is this what he does? He just hangs around and draws portraits of Hervé Villechaize? And carves likenesses and makes sculptures of black pencil.
So many different media.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And watercolors of Hervé Villechaize. Is that what a tattoo artist does?
I mean, I don't think so.
No?
I think it would be hard
Enlighten
to
me.
make a living just exclusively doing Hervé Villechaize themed art.
portraits and so forth. Maybe,
Right.
a clay rendition.
I could be wrong.
Papier-mâché?
I could be wrong, exactly. Right.
Okay.
Watercolor.
So it's something else, you're saying.
I'm guessing that the tattoo refers to like the inking of a body part.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be Hervé. Right.
I thought it was a guy who just specialized in all different manner of portraits and homages
to Hervé
Villechaize.
I can hear disappointment in your voice because you were kind of hoping.
I was kind of hoping. All right. Well, good enough.
Yes.
Moving on then. We have a shout out today, Jeff.
We do.
Why don't you take us into that?
Yes, this is a shout out to one Tyler Smith, who teaches Latin at the Ambrose School out in Meridian, Idaho.
I've been there.
Have you really?
Yes, I have.
Wow.
The year was 2016, I believe, maybe fall of 16. I think that's right. Former student of mine, a brilliant young woman named Heather Herrick Jennings. Probably not listening, but she was is I think something like the headmaster or the chief cook and bottle washer. I don't know, some big important post at that school.
Yeah.
And she invited me to come out and lead a Latin biduum, a spoken Latin weekend. So a very brilliant woman, and Dr. Jennings now. So I was out there, but I don't think Tyler Smith was there at the time.
Yeah.
But somehow we snagged or hoodwinked him into listening to the podcast.
Yeah.
So what does Tyler say?
Well, I got to ask. I mean, the Ambrose School, it sounds a little fancy.
It does sound a little fancy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we didn't use paper napkins at lunch. I think
No,
it was
wow.
exclusively linen.
Wow, man.
Yeah, the hallways were lined with portraits of Hervé Villechaize.
Now that's the sign of a fancy school. Well, let's hear about Tyler here. All right. So Tyler writes to us, says, I was a kid who was always reading and still am as an adult and loved ancient history. Many a day I spent in the school library reading books on Roman history and Greek mythology. It led me into studying history and humanities for my undergrad and graduate studies. What does one do with those degrees? Teach. I've taught those subjects for many years before I delved into classical language. First I dabbled in Greek, and then have gone deeper and deeper with Latin, which I now teach.
Very nice.
Fantastic. You want to pick it up there?
Sure. Tyler says, I love the depth and richness that the classics have and the humor that is found in them. In particular, I have discovered a whole new angle with being able to dive into the original language and seeing the changes that happen when things are translated into English. Now, that's all very interesting, but now we're about to get to the good part where he starts talking about us.
Oh, yes, I see it here.
He says, what I have found with Ad Nauseam is a delightful podcast that feeds this enjoyment and has even exposed me to wonderful authors, classical and new, e.g., exemple gratia, Richard. There have been many times I have pillaged a comment or idea from you guys to help me with my own classroom, which I hope you find acceptable.
No, I mean,
what do you think, Jeff?
We'll send him the bill. Right?
Well, I mean, I dispatched a team of our lawyers already
good.
out to Meridian, Idaho. If they can find the place, Tyler is going to, feel the full brunt of Dewey, Beatum, and Howe.
Yeah, exactly.
Our law firm.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But we thank him for this wonderful shout out anyway.
So kind, Tyler. Thank you for listening. Thanks for doing the hard work, right, Jeff? Of keeping the flame alive out there, teaching the young minds Latin, a noble and worthwhile profession.
Indeed.
So we're very grateful for that. Sent him some Ad Nauseam stickers, too.
Fantastic.
So hopefully he's sporting those at this point.
So can we promise those to all shout outs? I don't know. Can we just throw stickers around willy-nilly?
Well, we, for a while, had the ill-conceived idea of trying to peddle them.
Yes.
I think they're still listed on the website, buy a sticker. It didn't work. So now we're just giving them away.
Right.
You want a sticker, contact us. You can put it on your water bottle, the back of your phone case, your car, your forehead, anything like that.
I have one on my office door.
Nice.
Yes.
Does it get some comments?
I've had a couple students ask me, what is that? What is that? Right. I tell them about the podcast and then they never listen.
They roll their eyes.
Yeah. They scoff.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah. But we can take it.
Sure. So you want a sticker? Get in touch.
Yeah.
We'd love to dole them out. We're getting down to the last little bit. Maybe we'll reorder at some point.
Yeah.
So Jeff, what are we talking about today?
Well, we're going to pick it up where we left off on our last episode. We are talking about this book by one MacDonald. Is it Dennis MacDonald's book.
Yes, or old MacDonald, as they like to call him.
Right. He had a farm.
Yeah.
Right. But he wrote this book. Making the argument that there are several sections in the New Testament that he claims are directly influenced by or cribbing from, copying Homer.
That's right.
And we are going to go through this text.
That's right.
In some detail and let the audience know what we think of MacDonald's arguments and claims.
That's correct. So last week, when we were dealing with this particular topic, what we had was his argument that the book of Luke in particular, so Luke Acts, right? The Gospel of Luke and the Acts of the Apostles, building on his previous work with the Gospel of Mark.
Yes.
MacDonald says these are not just based on the work of Homer in the sense that he was influenced in the way that you or I might occasionally say something that's from Shakespeare, but not even know it's coming from Shakespeare.
Right.
Not that general kind of influence, but a deliberate copying from the structure of the Homeric poems.
Yes.
And we looked at as well at his 6 criteria, which are given in the introduction for what constitutes mimesis as opposed to form criticism.
Yes.
So form criticism is the idea that the early authors of the New Testament were working from legends and myths and oral tradition, maybe some documents like the Q document, and then they were assembling them according to a sense of genre. And MacDonald was contrasting this with his mimesis or imitation theory, that whoever Luke was, he sat down and said, I'm going to write this like the Iliad.
Yes.
And that will make it more appealing.
Right. Exactly.
And we looked at the idea of whether or not MacDonald actually believes in the historicity of anything that he's writing. We put that on hold, but it comes up later in the book, and the answer is a pretty clear no.
Right.
It's legendary material only.
Yes, exactly. Right. And so, I mean, I think one of the things that and that I mentioned last week that I think I found wanting in his introduction and going through these pieces of evidence is the answer to the question, well, why?
Right.
Why would Luke be doing this? I don't know if MacDonald is just kind of saying, well, it should be self-evident by what I'm saying.
Right.
Is he saying, well, since so many other people were doing it, that's why Luke is doing it?
Yes.
But I need at least some kind of approach to the question that Luke is doing this deliberately. I need to know what's the motive.
Correct.
Right. And so we'll see if he gets there.
Yes.
But so far, that's the big gap for me.
Right.
Yep.
And we also examined the evidence that he cited of another individual, a woman scholar named Bonz, B-O-N-Z, in which she claims that Luke is imitating Virgil.
Yes, that's right.
And so we had to look at that briefly. And it turns out that MacDonald dismisses that thesis, not on the basis of the fact that Virgil was too recent, but on the basis of the fact that Virgil and Luke are together imitating Homer. So that's kind of his answer to that question.
Right.
Okay, Jeff, so as we get into it then, we're not going to deal with all 4 cases. The title of the book is 4 Cases from the New Testament.
Yeah.
Today, we're going to try to wrap up the first of the 4 cases.
Indeed.
Whether we return to the other 3 at some point is kind of an open question.
Yeah, maybe we can see. We'd love to hear from the audience.
Right.
If they want more of this, then great.
The response has been good, but frankly, I'm not sure I want to commit myself to reading the whole work.
Yeah.
If there isn't the payoff.
Exactly. Right.
But the first of the 4 cases are the dreams of Cornelius and Peter.
Yes, indeed. So in this section, MacDonald makes the argument that particularly kind of the pairing of the kind of visions of Cornelius the centurion and Peter's vision in what chapter? It's in Acts
chapter 10.
Yes.
Chapters 10 and 11.
Right. He says they are kind of deliberately paired and arranged and organized in a way that is modeled after the dream that Zeus sends to Agamemnon in Iliad 2, and the way that connects also to this portent that Odysseus reminds the Greeks of when they're all running back from their ships thinking that they can go home, about this portent that took place at Aulis, where we have a serpent devouring birds, which was a prediction of how long the war was going to last and when Troy would be taken.
That's a great setup, Jeff.
And so he says, but that deliberate pairing of those 2 things, we see the mirroring of that in Acts. From the Iliad.
Yeah. So let's begin with a quote here from page 19 of MacDonald.
Yeah.
Of the texts from Acts to be studied in this volume, the first, chapter 10, verse 1, through chapter 11, verse 18, is the most significant.
Okay, so that's good. If we're going to just do one, we're going to
start with the best.
Best with that. Okay, right.
MacDonald continues, whereas one might remove the other passages from Acts without collapsing the structure of the whole book, I'm not sure, here's an editorial comment, I'm not sure I want to commit to that conclusion. But, says MacDonald, the conversion of Cornelius and his household is a pillar supporting Luke's entire literary and theological construction.
No, that's a huge claim.
It is. And I think there's legitimacy to that. So I'm with MacDonald on this point. I'm not with him in the sense that any other part could be removed without significantly altering it.
Right.
I'm not sure he's right about that. But I do agree that the conversion of Cornelius is a pillar that supports the entire literary and theological construction, and here's why. In Acts chapter 1, before Christ's ascension, he says to his disciples, they ask him, so when are you going to restore the kingdom to Israel, right? Mm-hmm. Can we just, it's as though they say, can we skip ahead, please, to the last scene? And he says, right? It's not for you to know the times and the places. And here's what I have for you instead. You'll be my witnesses, right? So you can imagine their disappointment. What? Suffering and hard work? They just wanted to skip to the thrones.
Right.
But he says in 4 places, Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, the ends of the earth.
Yes.
Right. So it's like dropping a pebble in a pool. You've got 4 concentric rings.
Yeah.
So to be brief, for the rest of the Acts of the Apostles, that's exactly what you see happen.
Yes.
And so Cornelius is the transition from Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, a largely Jewish culture, to Cornelius the Roman, so it goes to the ends of the earth.
Yes.
So in that sense, I think MacDonald is right.
Right. And then he connects that. Well, I mean, MacDonald makes the argument, and I think this is also fair, is that Peter's subsequent or vision that he has right around the same time,
right,
where he sees the sheets being lowered down,
yes, with
all the different animals in it, and he hears the voice that says, go slay and eat,
right,
and it's of course to an Orthodox Jew, all of these animals would have been considered unclean, and Peter says, I would never do that, and the vision is repeated, and ultimately Peter comes to the conclusion, and this is how it connects to Cornelius, is that God is saying, the gospel is not just for the Jews; it's for all mankind.
That's right.
Right, and so that's how the two are together. And Cornelius's vision is go send for Simon and bring him here. So we're going to get these two guys together.
Right, bringing Peter in contact with the Roman centurion.
Right,
and from there, it's a clear path to the end of the book of Acts, where Paul, in chapter 28, is in Rome, in the house of Caesar, preaching the gospel with openness unhindered.
Exactly. Now, I wanted to ask you something because I thought. I wasn't quite sure what MacDonald was trying to say.
Okay.
But one of the arguments I saw him trying to make is he says that one of the ways that Luke might be massaging Peter's vision is that one way to take that vision is that God in that vision is saying, hey, you don't have to follow the Orthodox rules anymore. You can eat anything. It's literally about you can have bacon now.
Right.
Right. And it's not on the face of it about the animals representing Gentiles. And so that MacDonald's making the argument that the way Luke arranges it is that by connecting it to the vision of Peter, he's kind of leading the audience to read it in the more allegorical way.
I see.
Rather than the literal way as like, this is Jesus has kind of superseded the laws.
Okay.
I mean, is that the way you took his argument?
Well, the specifics of MacDonald's argument didn't stand out to me that way, but I think the basic underlying point that he's making is right. Namely, that the vision that Peter is given is not primarily about food, right? It's about the gospel going to all nations, and therefore the Mosaic dietary laws and so forth are not intended to be universal. They're going to be set aside as the old covenant is superseded by the new covenant that Christ has inaugurated. Right.
Yeah. And I think MacDonald talks a little bit about how, it can be two things, right? It doesn't have to be one or the other. But I think the larger point that I saw him making is he wants the reader to see that these two visions are deliberately paired in a particular way to set up the pairing between the dream of Agamemnon and the portent in the Iliadic material.
Yes. So to continue with MacDonald at the bottom of page 19.
Yep.
He says, quote, the literary context of Cornelius's conversion likewise witnesses to its significance. It precedes Peter's escape from prison, the final narrative devoted primarily to him, and anticipates Paul's career. Furthermore, Luke devoted an unusual amount of papyrus to the event. Almost 150 lines constitute his longest unified narrative. The importance of the story for Luke and for Luke's book is thus unmistakable. It marks the final critical stage in the extension of the gospel and the expansion of the church. Luke intended his reader to understand that he was witnessing a decisive step, perhaps the decisive step in the expansion of Christianity into the non-Jewish world.
So do you think in a way, I mean, maybe I'm anticipating where he's going with this, but do you think he's saying in a way is that because this is a transition from the Jewish to the Gentile world, that the use of Homer would make that much more sense.
I didn't get that idea from the argument.
Okay.
Did you?
No, but I thought that might be. I mean, on the face of it,
you're being too kind to him.
I guess so.
That's helping him out.
All right. Yeah. But I mean, I didn't see that, but it's often hard for me to see where MacDonald was going. There's so much setup material that I say, okay, let's get to the main thesis.
Right. So then he gives us quotations from Acts 10 and Acts 11, recounts Peter's vision, recounts the vision of Cornelius, and then goes on page 22 to tell us what's coming in the second chapter. He says, the next chapter provides a summary and new translations of the relevant Homeric passages. Chapter 3 monitors imitations of the dream and portent in ancient Greek and Latin literature. Chapter 4 compares the dream and portent with the visions of Cornelius and Peter in Acts, and exposes this is the important part, the remarkable density of parallels between them. So I think he's kind of set down the marker, the density of parallels between the two visions. Anytime that you compare things that are similar, right, you have to have enough points of similarity, and the similarities have to be overwhelming and enough. And as MacDonald says in his 6 criteria, the sequence of the laying out of these similar points has to be close enough that the conclusion is inescapable. Yeah.
I think one of my, so I was reading this, one of my kind of gut criticisms of MacDonald's argument is that, I think as we've mentioned on air before, like my dissertation was on Apuleius.
Right.
And the Apuleius
and we even have, if I may interrupt, we even have one listener who keeps asking if we would devote an episode or two to Apuleius and your dissertation.
Oh, well, maybe to Apuleius.
Hard pass. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
Hard pass in the dissertation.
No, we got to do that. Anyway, keep going.
The Apuleius' Metamorphoses or the Golden Ass is filled with dreams and portents. Right. And as he's breaking down the way he breaks down the dream to Agamemnon, these various stages that happen throughout, it struck me as that, well, it's a loose enough structure that you could apply it to most of those dreams that show up in the Apuleian text, right?
That's right.
I mean, that you could say, okay, well, Homer sets the standard, right? He says,
true enough.
This is how you present a dream narrative in classical antiquity. But by the time it gets to Apuleius, or maybe even by the time it gets to Luke, it just becomes so standardized that it no longer has anything to do with Homer anymore.
Right. So you could summarize it this way, perhaps. Let me know what you think.
Mm-hmm.
Something that explains everything explains nothing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If the key fits every lock, then what does it tell you about the quality of those locks?
Right, exactly. Right? Yeah.
And that's what I find potentially as a weakness of this argument.
It reminds me, I know many episodes back we did one on like Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey.
Oh, yes.
Right? And one of the
Young and the Restless.
Yes. And I think one of the legitimate criticisms of Campbell's hero's journey structure is that it's loose enough that you can fairly easily fit a square peg into a round hole.
That's right.
And so how useful is it?
Yeah, it's like the phenomenon of déjà vu, right? You have this, I'm sure, at times.
Yeah.
My wife and I were having a conversation the other day, and she said something to me, and I had the overwhelming sense of déjà vu that we had that exact conversation.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is that would somehow surprise me, right? Because we have had hundreds of thousands of conversations,
right.
having been married for quite a long time, talking about similar things. So why would I be surprised about that similarity?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So let's go ahead to page 24, because here I believe MacDonald helps us quite a bit when he lays out for us some of the aspects of what constitutes a Homeric dream. Jeff, can you read on page 24, first open paragraph?
Yes. He writes, in Homeric epic, mortals do not have dreams, they receive them as messengers of the gods. Dreamers are spectators, and dreams are not abstractions or projections, but actual beings, like Oneros. Oneros identifies himself as Dios Angelos, an angel of Zeus, usually and aptly translated, a messenger of Zeus. Greek artists sometimes depicted Oneros as a young man with wings, similar to angels in Christian art. So, I mean, I've seen that in those red figure vase paintings.
Oh, yeah.
You have, figures like Thanatos and Hypnos and
That's
Oneros.
right.
They do appear like a cliched
Death,
angel.
and sleep, and dream.
Right.
Bringing messages. Iris, of course, the messenger of Hera, has wings and so forth, and Hermes.
Yeah.
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 Not a profound observation.
No,
but I don't think that's what MacDonald is. I don't think he's hinging his whole argument on that prima facie similarity.
Right. But I mean, I think he draws I think worthy attention to, in mythic texts, dreams are often sent by the gods, right? They are messengers of the gods. They they tell you about your future, which is so strikingly different than, say, like a Jungian or Freudian approach to dreams. Dreams tell you about your past.
Yes.
Right? They're archaeology.
Right.
And
so there's a very useful, I would say, nugget of wisdom or knowledge that we can take from MacDonald. It's not obviously unique to him.
Right.
That is that the contemporary and the ancient view of dreams, they're very divergent.
Right.
At best, we think that, like you were saying, that dreams communicate something about our memory, our subconscious, how it is that we are processing our lives and our experiences.
Right.
The ancients alike, whether they're Greek or Hebrew or some other, I guess, nation, didn't see it that way.
Yeah, exactly.
They were divine communications of some sort or another.
Exactly.
But does that prove that Luke is imitating Homer in the visions of Cornelius and Peter?
No, I don't think it does.
Not yet.
No.
But we have to have some sense, right, Jeff, of what it is that's contained in Agamemnon's dream in Iliad 2 before we can test the hypothesis that Luke actually imitates it.
Exactly, because MacDonald will come around to making very specific linguistic comparisons.
Yes.
Right? So, assuming our audience is perhaps not familiar with this,
yes,
let's walk through a bit of the narrative here.
Okay.
So, at the beginning of the Iliad, the Greeks are being devastated by a plague,
right,
sent by Apollo, and we find out this is because on a raiding party, Apollo's his priest Calchas,
right,
his daughter has been taken as a war prize by Agamemnon.
Chryseis, you mean?
Chryseis, sorry. Is taken as a war prize by Agamemnon. He complains. Apollo comes down, avenges this, and starts sending a plague.
Right.
So Agamemnon is told, well, this is the problem. You've got to give the daughter back.
Right.
And so he does so, but to save face and to kind of save his honor, he takes Achilles' concubine Briseis away from him, which sets up Achilles' rage and anger and his decision to sit out the war.
And sets up the rest of Western civilization.
Right, exactly. And so Thetis, his mother, wants also revenge for this slight against her son.
Right.
And so Zeus complies, and he decides, I'm going to send a dream to Agamemnon, which is a lie, or at least it's wishy-washy enough that he's hoping that Agamemnon misinterprets this.
Right.
But Zeus sends a dream to Agamemnon, basically telling him, now's the time. You can the path is open. Now is the time to take the city and end this thing.
Right.
And MacDonald makes much of the squishiness of the word nun, the now,
right,
there, which Agamemnon takes to mean on this very day.
Okay.
But then Agamemnon, in turn, decides he's going to turn this into kind of a reverse psychology on the fellow Greeks, and ultimately tells the people not the substance of the dream that he had, but basically tells him, there's no point in all of this, it's time to go home.
Right.
And so the troops, which have been there now 9+ years, they say, great, and they start running for the ships.
Finally.
Correct. And that's when Odysseus stops them, and using the power of his persuasion and his speech, he reminds them of this creepy portent that they all saw on the beaches of Aulis before the ship sailed over to Troy.
Right. So Odysseus inserts himself in this scheme that Agamemnon has hatched.
Yes.
It's not clear to me exactly why Agamemnon is he testing the men to see who's really loyal in a Gideon kind of move, right?
Yeah.
Let's get just the ones who are really committed to fighting.
Right. I've always read that it just shows just how bad a leader Agamemnon is and how terribly he misreads the situation.
Right.
I remember I had a professor say, well, Agamemnon is he's trying to shame the men.
Yes.
And they would say, oh no, we can't do this. We have a job to finish. He did not anticipate.
But it backfired.
It backfires big time.
Right.
Right. And it's only when Odysseus reminds him of this portent. And here, maybe I can read from MacDonald here. And this is on page 25. So this is Odysseus speaking. So we all know this well in our minds, and you are all witnesses. It was as yesterday or the day before that the ships of the Achaeans were assembling at Aulis to bring harm to Priam and the Trojans. Around a spring and holy altars, we were sacrificing perfect hecatombs to the immortals beneath a beautiful plane tree from which clear water flowed. There a great sign appeared, a serpent, blood red on its back, terrible, that the Olympian Zeus himself brought to the light. Darted from under an altar and rushed for the plane tree, where on the highest branch were nestlings of a sparrow, 8 helpless chicks, crouching beneath the leaves. Their mother, who birthed the chicks, made 9. The serpent then devoured them as they chirped pitiably, and their mother flitted around them, lamenting her beloved little ones. Coiling back, it grabbed her wing as she squawked. When the serpent had devoured the chicks and the sparrow herself, the god who had revealed it made it disappear, but the son of crooked counseling Kronos turned it to stone. We just stood there, amazed at what had happened.
Okay.
And so Odysseus says, what this was a portent. This is how the war is going to go. All of the chicks and the sparrow itself represent years. And so we're going to be there for 9+ years. And in the 10th year, that's when we can take the city.
Right.
So Odysseus has to remind them, says, listen, no, we already had a portent. We already had a message from the gods that this is going to finish. This is how it's going to happen. And Odysseus persuades the army to stay.
So it's dream against dream.
Yeah.
Right? Or it's vision interpreted by Calchas against the dream sent to Agamemnon alone.
Yes.
And Odysseus' conclusion is Agamemnon's dream is the deceptive one.
Yes.
We have to stick with what the gods have already told us.
Right.
Through Calchas.
Now, already it seems to me, so MacDonald is making the argument that the pairing of the dreams or the visions of Cornelius and Peter are paired in a similar way that the dream of Agamemnon and this portent of the snake and the sparrow are paired. Okay. I mean, already it seems to me that they're, it would strike me there would have to be a lot more kind of obvious similarities.
Yes.
I mean, we have in the Greek text.
There's no snake. There's no birds.
Well, but even kind of the use of the dream, right? So the dream is sent by Zeus to deceive Agamemnon.
Right.
Agamemnon deceives the people by not telling him what the dream was.
Right.
It's such a radically different setup.
The purpose.
And then I mean, MacDonald goes to make comparisons. Well, in Peter's dream, you have this animal is mentioned, and that's the symbol. There's a bird there, and it's kind of snaky, and it seems like such a stretch.
Yeah.
So I don't see. To me, on the face of it, there would have to be much more of a kind of a thematic similarity rather than just you have kind of two divine things that are linked together in both texts.
Okay. Well, let's go on to page 26. And let MacDonald develop his argument a little bit more as we continue to evaluate it.
Yeah, read a bit, would you?
He says the first criterion for detecting mimesis, and a necessary condition for it, is the accessibility of the proposed model. The more widely known, available, and influential the target, the stronger the case for mimesis. Conversely, if the proposed model is obscure, mimesis is less likely. That stands to reason. It's a point he made in the introduction.
Yes.
Then he continues, surely Luke and his readers would have known of the second book of the Iliad. The epic was the most famous Greek work in antiquity and the most common mimetic target in ancient education. Pedagogical uses of the Iliad were not evenly distributed among the 24 books. Books 1 and 2 were by far the most popular. Okay, fair enough. He then talks about the distribution of the books in terms of childhood exercises and so forth for those who were learning the Greek language. And on the same page a little further down, he says, quote, Agamemnon's lying dream was a notorious blemish on Homeric theology. Plato complained, although we praise much in Homer, we will not praise this, Zeus's sending of the dream to Agamemnon. Lucian reminded his readers that the king of the gods deceived Agamemnon, sending a false vision to him in order that many of the Achaeans might lose their lives. In another context, he cites Iliad, Book 2. Agamemnon's statement that the dream came to him was divine, theos. Lucian contrasts the lying dream with a dream appearing that was truly divine. According to Aristotle, the grammarian Hippias of Thasus tried to exculpate Zeus philologically, and other textual variants, scholia, and commentaries witness to the passage as a widely debated Homeric problem.
What exactly is what
the
Plato
problem is
that Zeus is lying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
this goes to a point we've made over and over and over again, right? That what Plato is doing, despite his vast and probably almost perfect knowledge of Homer, is disagreeing with Homeric theology.
Yes.
Whether he was right to take it seriously or as just kind of stories, I don't know. But he's disagreeing with Homeric theology at every point. It's a watershed moment. But what this suggests to me is that if MacDonald is going to try to connect the visions of Peter and Cornelius to Agamemnon's deceptive dream in Iliad 2, the greatest barrier he has to overcome is one that you have already identified, which is the difference in purpose is so profound.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why at this stage I'm much more prone to accept the broader argument, that the kind of the in the water argument.
Yes.
Right? That Homer sets a template of this is how you do a dream sequence, and it was just so much part of the literary culture by the time we get to Luke, 700, 600, 700 years later, that's just simply how you did it, rather than trying to call deliberate attention of your audience and say, hey, that whispering kind of Homer.
Right.
Right.
Because isn't there a great danger in that? Which is that people would draw the wrong conclusion unless you're making the contrast. So first you set up the comparison, right? Luke's writing about the vision of Peter, and you set up the comparison. You put subtle hints in the text. I want you to understand, reader, that I'm alluding to or I'm referencing the famous dream of Agamemnon in Iliad 2.
Yeah.
But that at some point you have to say something that's a little more clear, like, unlike that dream, or dreams generally,
right, this
one is true.
Yes.
And it has an important theological purpose that's going to control the rest of the book.
Yes.
Is there anything like that in the Lucan recounting?
No, I mean, I don't see it, right? Again, it boils down to that question, if this is a deliberate tagging of Homer, well, why is it? I mean, is Luke just showing off?
Right. Not to mention, well, there's the cultural accessibility argument.
Yeah.
Along the lines of Luke's reasoning, either independently or from an orthodox position under divine inspiration. He's reasoning that this is a way to make my, again, from the non-orthodox position, my made-up material, or from the orthodox position, my inspired material. This is a way of making it more palatable and approachable to my audience.
Right.
Right? That might be one reason he's doing it. But so far, I'm not convinced.
I guess so. I mean, that's something that I mentioned just offhand earlier in the show.
Sure.
That is this a way of signaling that the story is for the Gentiles,
right,
by tagging Homer?
That could be, but a large part of MacDonald's argument is that you didn't have to be a Greek and grow up in Greek culture to know the story of Homer.
True, exactly. Yeah.
Right? He's made the point that, Luke was a Greek of some sort, but if he was raised in Palestine and so forth with one non-Greek parent, he still would have known Homer. That was part of the early argument.
Yeah.
Could you read the last paragraph, please, in this chapter, which is on page 28? Because I feel like MacDonald is a little bit slow to develop the argument, so we need to get to the next chapter.
Yes. Yeah, so he closes out this section with, surely Iliad 2 satisfies the first criterion for mimesis accessibility. The point merits emphasis. To judge from the physical remains of school exercises and other testimonies, these Homeric stories were not only accessible, they profoundly shaped ancient literary education, prompted theological debates among pagans and Christians, and became tropes in poetry and prose. These observations anticipate the second criterion, analogy, evidence that other ancient authors imitated the same proposed model. The next chapter discusses how poets and historians recast Iliad 2 for their own ends. Once we have established this mimetic tradition, we may better appreciate Luke's variations on the theme.
Okay.
So I got to say,
following the argument?
I am.
Okay.
I need to check. I would like to look at MacDonald's bibliography.
Yeah.
If Maru's not in there, I don't know how serious I can take him. He's talking about school
Ancient
book
education.
Exactly. Right. I mean, all of this is fair. I mean, I don't want to. There's a huge chunk that I would rather not go through, but just kind of tip my cap to MacDonald's, where he talks about all these different examples where you see different authors tagging Iliad 2.
Right.
I mean, he makes a good case that Iliad 2, not just the Iliad, but that particular book of the Iliad was particularly well known.
Yes,
that's fine.
I think that it's like what Kenneth Dover says and Werner Jaeger, that Homer is the Bible of the Greeks. Right. That's a point we've made so many times.
Right.
But I have the feeling a little bit that when MacDonald says the point merits emphasis, he might be pushing on that point a little heavy or relying on it a little much.
Yeah.
Because the later points are not really as strong.
I would agree with
that. So how many times do you have to establish that everybody, even in Palestine, had some knowledge of Homer? We got it. I'm looking for the payoff. Luke in particular not only had knowledge, but was deliberately accessing it
Yeah.
in these two stories.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Well, let's move on then to the next chapter, which is chapter 3.
Yes.
And it is entitled More Dreams and Portents.
Well, Dave, actually,
Yes?
speaking of more dreams and portents,
Yes?
it's time for the ads.
All right.
This episode of Ad Nauseum is brought to you by Ratio Coffee. Dave, on your
Yes.
recent travels,
Yes.
I imagine one of the problematic things was being away from your ratio.
Oh, it was for sure.
Yeah.
I stayed at a very lovely little hotel in Greenville, South Carolina.
Yeah.
They had one of those in-room coffee makers.
Oh, no.
And I thought, this is exactly where the Ratio 4 should go.
Exactly. Yeah,
Because
perfect.
I had
right.
this little pouchy thing that I was supposed to, tiny plastic, slide it in on the top, and it was grim.
So even worse than a marsupod.
Oh, much worse than a marsupod. It wasn't even a gurik. I don't know what it was.
Man.
So then, predictably, when
Yeah.
I left there, I had to stop off at Charbucks and get a smoked, roasted, burnt cup of Joe.
Right.
Yeah. So I was very happy to get back to my Ratio 4, but I had a panic moment actually because I thought I was suffering a malfunction
Oh, no.
on the Ratio 4. I couldn't get it to brew temporarily.
Oh, no.
Turns out it was user error. Imagine that.
Oh, yeah.
I had to get the acrylic canister seated properly. Once I popped it in place, we were back to one-touch brewing.
Excellent. And you're using kind of the 4 these days exclusively.
You betcha.
Yep.
Yeah, the Millennium Falcon is in storage. The 8.
Gotcha. Yep. I've got the Millennium Falcon out on the counter. That's my home brew.
Okay.
And I've got the 4 in my office.
So what do you use to brew in your vehicle or on your bike?
I'm working. I got to get a 6.
Okay.
For to strap onto my moped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you love best about the Ratio family of coffee makers?
Well, there's a lot of things I like. I like that. I like the look. It's just a beautiful looking machine. I like the simplicity. It's one touch, 3 stages. But the best thing is that it just brews the
taste.
The taste. Perfect pot of coffee every single time.
Yes. There's kind of nutty tones and leathery tones and the other ways that people describe coffee. Did you go in for that?
For like describe kind of the level of tannic.
That's right. So you brewed up this morning at home.
Yep.
You got to the office?
At the office, I brewed up a small individual pot for myself in the 4. It's perfect. So listeners, if you want one of these wonderful machines, let us help you out.
You want to up your coffee game.
Yep. Go to ratiocoffee.com. That's RATIO coffee.com / ad nauseum.
That's right.
Yes. And there you will find an opportunity to enter in this coupon code AN ratio 2025.
Oh, Jeff, I'm so proud of you.
Yeah, I finally got it right
You
this
got
time.
the code this time.
Yes. And that will get you, Dave, what will that get them?
$20 off any Ratio coffee machine.
Yes.
Something you don't want to miss. Check it out. This episode of Ad Nauseum is also brought to you by our brand new sponsor, one Della Chelpka Art. If you are looking for art that truly speaks to your story. You got a story, Jeff?
I got a story.
What's your story?
My story? Well, it's still being written.
Okay.
Yes.
But what's a current chapter?
It's
Like hardworking dad,
losing my hair, trying to keep track of my children.
hardworking professor, right? Taking care of business and working overtime.
Exactly.
That kind of thing.
Yeah, work out.
All right, that's your story. So if you want art that truly speaks to your story, meet Della, a Tucson-based oil painter who captures the people, places, and moments you cherish with breathtaking detail. Mm-hmm. Della has showcased her work in multiple galleries, illustrated books, and is often commissioned for standout projects. See her current works for sale at her website. And what is that website, Jeff?
That is Della Chelpka, DellaChelpka.art.
Yes, and what will they find there at DellaChelpka.art?
They will find an opportunity to use the coupon Apelles.
Yes.
APELLES.
What?
After the great painter of antiquity.
Maybe the greatest painter of all time?
Perhaps,
Apelles?
yes. So if you put in that coupon code, that'll get you 10% off any purchase there on Della's website.
Check it out.
This episode is also brought to you by Hackett Publishing. We love these guys. They've been with us from the very beginning. This wonderful publishing house took a chance on a couple of chuckleheads like us. And they are one of the few publishing companies out there that are keeping the flame alive. A wonderful array, a huge array, a massive catalog works from the classics and all different kind of corners of academia. I love Hackett because they are affordable.
Yes.
Quality of their translations is very, very high.
The covers are ugly and poorly executed.
Quite the opposite, right? They are creative and attractive and extremely affordable. Dave, what about you? What about?
Well, I echo all of those sentiments, and I would just add that the broad range of titles is truly remarkable. In my own little garden library setup that I have here, I scan the shelves with my roving eyes, and I find titles by Aquinas from Hackett, titles by Descartes, sensing a philosophical theme here.
Yes.
Titles by Plato, like the CDC Reeve translation of the Republic, titles by Aristotle, but also Lombardo for the Iliad, the Odyssey, Ovid's Metamorphoses, pretty much anything you could want. So, listener, if you want to continue to build a library, you want to be able to read these things, maybe give them as gifts, pass them on to others, go to hackettpublishing.com, HACKETT publishing.com, roam the aisles virtually, drop some titles into your grocery satchel, and then, Jeff, what should they do?
Well, they should use the coupon code AN2025. That's AN as in ad nauseum plus the current year, and that will give them two wonderful things: 20% off your entire order and free shipping.
And a third wonderful thing.
Yes.
They will support the podcast.
Indeed.
So we can continue to bring this adult-minded entertainment with occasional learning thrown in to a mass audience.
Yes. Check it out.
Okay, Jeff, as we resume here with MacDonald, we're in chapter 3.
Yes.
And can we summarize some of this material a little bit rapidly so we can get to the real heart of it?
Right. So I take to be the heart of chapter 3 is MacDonald gives us a framework of kind of a narrative breakdown of kind of the sequence of a typical dream, or the sequence that we see in Agamemnon's dream.
So a standard ancient dream, and then he gives us other kinds of examples of that?
Yes, exactly right. And then I think he'll use that that same kind of structure to and as a framework for understanding the biblical dreams. Yep. Right. So on page 30, he kind of breaks this down in outline form. And so there are kind of three major stages in a dream narrative. One, sending the messenger. So this is where oneros, kind of the angelos of Zeus, would show up.
Right.
The second part is the delivering of the message.
Makes sense.
And third, the response to the message.
Okay.
Right? Now, if that were all to it, it would be my response would be, well, kind of duh.
Yes.
Right. Now it's
like getting into a car. There's the approaching the car. There's the opening the door of the car.
Right.
There's the sitting in the car, and then I suppose closing the door.
Yes. Yes, exactly. But there's more to it than that. Let's give MacDonald a little credit.
All right.
So there are a number of subsections here. So say under sending the messenger, Zeus gives an order to Oneros to depart.
Right.
There's the command to the mortal that Oneros gives. There's an assurance of victory in terms of the Trojan War, which he's talking about in this message. Under delivering the message, there's the messenger appears. We have a rebuke of the dream to the receiver of the dream. There's the expression of divine favor. There's a command to the mortal. There again, a repetition, the assurance of victory. So he does get more specific here, but the general framework is fairly generic. Yeah.
Very good. Also on that same page, 31, where you ended up, there's a paragraph that says, MacDonald, even though these parallels are striking, he's talking about parallels in the various kinds of ancient dreams, they need not indicate mimesis. Dream scenes were traditional before Homer, and many of the parallels cited here appear elsewhere in the epic. On the other hand, the author of the Odyssey, because that's what he's basing it on, almost certainly knew the Iliad and borrowed extensively from it. Greek tragedy, too, is replete with dreams, many of which show Homeric influence. As we have noted, I would like to point in another direction momentarily, Jeff, and see what you think about this. I don't find MacDonald talking about the many dreams recorded in the Old Testament serving as possible inspiration for the way that Luke structures the dreams.
Yeah.
So there's the famous dreams that Joseph interprets at the end of the book of Genesis. The baker and the cupbearer of Pharaoh.
Yes.
And Joseph's in prison. And there's cows, and there's other kinds of things, and grapes. And Joseph, says, dreams come from God. I'll interpret them. And he does. His ancestors, both his father Jacob had the dream of the the ladder and the angels ascending and descending, and Abraham and Isaac had visions. And then you can go on from there in the other direction to Solomon, where he had his famous dream.
Right. Or even Daniel interpreting Nebuchadnezzar's dream.
Yes.
Right. In some, I'm glad you brought that up. In some ways, it would seem that would be a much more kind of obvious
natural template.
Maybe MacDonald would say, well, all those guys are cribbing from Homer too.
Well, he might say that.
Yeah.
I think that the chronology, the final selection and commitment to writing of some of those things may have been quite late. But the claim is that the initial composition was actually prior to Homer.
Pre-Homer, right, exactly.
So it doesn't really check out too well. But, right. So that's really what we can say about chapter 3. For me, at least, it doesn't deliver very much in terms of demonstrating Lucan reliance on Homer. It does give many different indications of how dreams were interpreted by others than Homer.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. He spends a good chunk of that chapter also kind of laying out this argument of how well-known Iliad 2 must have been. And right. So for Luke to kind of pick up on that would make more sense. I don't think that it's worth going through all of those many examples. I think MacDonald makes a solid case.
Yes, he cites Herodotus. He cites the dream of Scipio as recorded by Cicero in his De Republica. He has a nice chart, you might say, on what page is this? This would be pages 40 and 41, where he lays out a divine favor. Zeus cares for you. Juno gave this order. Juno cares for you. Standard way that a dream motif is developed.
Yes.
So now we're ready for chapter 4 and what ought to be, after all this groundwork, the big payoff.
Exactly. Right. So MacDonald opens the chapter with this. So the visions of Cornelius and Peter conform to this venerable tradition of kind of the use of Iliad 2. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. This chapter will investigate each of the 5 scenes in Acts 10 and 11, 4 of which resonate with Iliad 2. And then he says, chapter 5 will argue that the best explanation for the parallels is mimesis. But let's get into some of the details.
Right.
Just continuing on. So scene 1, the vision of Cornelius from Acts 10, 1 through 8. MacDonald. Luke begins his tale like this. There was a certain man in Caesarea, Cornelius by name, centurion of the cohort called Italian, pious, fearing God with his entire household, providing many alms for the poor, and praying constantly to God. Later, his soldiers praised his integrity by calling him a righteous man, fearing God and attested to by the whole ethnos of the Jews. Luke also refers to Cornelius' relatives, household, and companions. His residence in Caesarea was large enough to accommodate a large assembly. Cornelius thus resembles Agamemnon.
Okay, are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
Both, can I pick it up?
Yes, please.
Both were officers of European armies in the East. Okay, so that would also be Napoleon.
Yeah.
That would be Hitler in the Barbarossa assault on the Soviet Union.
Right.
Who else would that be?
You get Genghis Khan to a certain degree.
Well, except he was he was an officer of an Eastern army in the
not
West.
European. Right?
Yeah.
Right.
But then, continues MacDonald, both were intimately related to their families. So that includes you, me, and virtually everyone else who's ever lived.
Yeah, how is one not intimately related to their family?
I am only distantly related to my family. Well, he's probably, in fairness to MacDonald, he's probably trying to say something else.
Yeah, right.
And he just didn't choose that particular phrase too well.
Right.
Okay, continuing on. Both looked after the economic welfare of their underlings. Now, that's more substantive, because you could have a leader that disregards those beneath him. And finally, both were noted for piety. Agamemnon claimed never to have sailed past a shrine to Zeus without offering bulls for sacrifice. That could really slow down your cruise.
It could, exactly. And I don't know how trustworthy Agamemnon is as a source about himself either.
Oh no!
Right?
Right.
We take this at face value.
Right. And throughout the epic, says MacDonald, one finds Agamemnon at prayer and worship. Cornelius too, quoting Acts, prayed constantly to God. So far, not convinced. Jeff, you want to continue there, please?
Yes. On the other hand, MacDonald writes, one could not say that Agamemnon was righteous or that his household feared the gods. Okay. The house of Atreus was one of the most troubled in antiquity. It's an understatement. And Agamemnon himself was no saint. He sacrificed his daughter Iphigenia to win favorable winds, and his theft of Briseis produced the rift with Achilles that led to many deaths. After the war, he brought the Trojan princess Cassandra home as his concubine, outraging his wife Clytemnestra, and on and on and on and on.
His wife Clytemnestra, who then murdered Agamemnon,
yes,
and murdered Cassandra,
right,
and then was killed by her son Orestes.
Yes. So there's a lot of places where the parallels with Cornelius immediately fall apart.
Yeah, maybe the parallel is not quite as close as he suggests.
Yes. But let's get down to the text itself.
Okay.
Right? So this is the part there. If I'm going to be convinced, I need to see very distinctive linguistic parallels.
All right. You mentioned that last week, and I really liked that. So you want to start on page 46,
yes,
where he deals with this criterion of appearance of the messenger?
Right.
Do you want to maybe read the Iliad portion? I read the Acts portion on the right, or
yes,
vice versa?
Yeah, I'll take the Iliad, you take Acts, right? So yes, the opening of the dream from Iliad. Quickly, he, Oneros, arrived at the swift ships of the Achaeans and went to Atreides Agamemnon. He found him sleeping in his bed, so he stood above his head in the likeness of Nestor. You want to read your part there?
So now from Acts chapter 10, verses 3 through 4a and 30 through 31. About the 9th hour of the day, he clearly saw in a vision an angel of God coming to him. When Cornelius retells the tale, MacDonald has this in brackets. He says, 4 days ago at this very hour, at the 9th, I was praying in my house, when suddenly a man stood before me in dazzling clothes and saying, Cornelius. So I guess the verbal echoes are what? Mentioning of a time?
Mentioning of a time. I guess the word of angelos.
Yes.
Right?
Messenger.
Messenger / angel.
But I guess angelos would have to parallel to oneros in Iliad 2:17 through 26.
Yeah.
Now, when oneros speaks, further down in the column, we do get the word angelos dios, messenger of Zeus, which is an angelos in Acts chapter 10 as well.
Yes.
Do you want to read a little bit more of what Oneros says from your part?
The divine Oneros spoke. Are you sleeping, son of wise Atreus? A man burdened with decisions on whom his people rely, with so many worries, ought not sleep through the night? Now listen attentively. I am an angel, I am an angelos, a messenger to you from Zeus.
Okay. Then from Acts 10, we have, when he, meaning Cornelius, gazed at him, he was terrified and said, what is it, sir? So the verb that he picks out here is stay in Iliad 2 from histemi, and este in Acts 10 also from histemi, which means to stand.
Yes.
So that and the mention of angelos and the fact that the visions occurred at specific times and that the messenger came to the house to deliver the message, I guess are the inescapable verbal echoes. Is that your impression?
I guess so.
Okay.
Let's look a little further. Let's look at the second stage.
Well, before we get to that, I think we should give MacDonald's little summary here.
All right.
In each column, can you read that portion?
Yeah, in each column, an angel from the god comes to a military leader in his home, stands before him looking like a man, and addresses him by name. The angelos stood before Cornelius, este. The angelos stood, stay, above the head of Agamemnon. This use of the verb histemi and compounds was common in Greek imitations of the lying dream.
Okay. I don't know. What is the messenger supposed to do when he arrives at the person's place? Recline? Is the messenger supposed to kneel?
Come sliding in on his knees? Right.
Yeah, I'm not convinced. The most striking difference, says MacDonald, between the two accounts pertains to Cornelius' wakefulness. His vision is called exactly that. Harama, not a dream. He saw it clearly. Aiden phaneros, not at night, but in bright afternoon light. Cornelius gazed intently. Atanisas at the angel, trembled and even spoke to him. This is no dream, and for that reason there also is no rebuke for sloth, which is motif 2.2.
Yes.
In the Iliad, Oneros rebuked Agamemnon. It is not right, then, that a man with his grave duties sleep the night away, and so forth.
Yeah.
So I have to say that MacDonald's identification of the differences between the two seems to me stronger than his identification of the similarities.
Yes, exactly.
That's how it strikes me.
Exactly.
Do we want to go on to 2.3 and look at our columns, expression of divine favor?
Yes.
Go ahead.
All right. In the Iliad, Oneros says, I am an angel to you from Zeus, who, though he is far away, cares for you greatly and takes pity on you. And then from Acts.
Yes, the angel spoke. This is 10:4b. The angel spoke, your prayers and your alms have ascended to remembrance before God. MacDonald picks on these two, or identifies these two corresponding Greek words that he wants us to focus on. The take pity from Iliad is elaire, and from Acts 10, the take pity is a word that means alms, eleemosunai. Now, the one is a verb, the other is a feminine plural noun.
They share a root.
They share a root, that is to have pity or to have mercy.
Yeah.
But one is in the context of Cornelius is giving gifts to the poor, alms, and God takes notice of this.
Yes.
In the Iliad, it's Zeus taking pity on Cornelius. On Agamemnon. So it's the opposite.
Yes, it's quite the opposite. And then as MacDonald recognizes in the following lines, where he says, what's also opposite is the intent. The words of Ambrose, it's a hoax.
Right.
It's
this expression of divine approval, he says in the Iliad, is a cruel hoax.
Yes.
Zeus actually was punishing Agamemnon for having insulted Achilles.
Yeah.
Should we go down to 2.6, departure of the messenger?
Yes.
Okay, you want to read the Iliad portion?
Yes. So when Hos-ara, he had spoken, Phonesos, he went away. Anabeseto. Apabeseto.
Right.
The speaker then flew off, and sweet sleep released me. All right. From Acts.
So then Acts chapter 10, verse 7, when Hosde, the angel who spoke to him, went away, Apelthen, he summoned Phonesos, 2 servants, and a pious soldier from among those who attended to him.
Again, I think the links are weak.
This is a little more persuasive.
It's better.
This to me is a little more persuasive.
But if you're going to rely on Hosde,
I know Hos-ara and Hosde, and by the way, he has not accented host properly, just as an error. Probably not his fault. Errors happen in the production of books all the time. It's got the wrong mark on it, but Hos-ara and Hosde are not close. Apabesata in Iliad is apabino. Apelthen in Acts is aperkomai. So there are only so many ways in Greek to say he departed, and these two don't even match. The only thing that seems a little bit close is the use of the aorist participle. Phonesos, he had spoken.
Yeah.
And then in Acts 10, Phonesos, he spoke and summoned.
Yeah.
But again, so Luke learned some Homeric forms when he was learning how to write Greek. That doesn't prove that he's referring to Iliad 2 when he tells the story about Peter's vision,
right?
Cornelius's vision.
I think it was something I would find more convincing, and I don't think MacDonald goes into this at all, is issues of dialect, right? Where can we see kind of a Homeric epic dialect straying from a koine, a koine kind of a usage? I think that would be to someone who really knew their Greek, that would jump out,
like a hapax legomenon or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Which means that you probably all know this, listener. You're a smart audience. Sneak some flattery in there. A hapax legomenon is a word that's only attested once.
Right.
We don't have any other attestation of it, so it's hard to nail down its meaning.
Yeah.
But it always sticks out like a sore thumb. Right?
Yes.
Where'd that word come from?
Exactly.
Well, Jeff, I don't think we have time really to go through the other columns, do we? Like Peter's vision, comparing Iliad 2:303 to Acts 10:9 and B.
Yeah. Well, Dave, we are getting up against the clock.
Yeah, that's
here.
true.
And so I think, in fairness to MacDonald, we should, just because of time, we can't cover all of the different comparisons.
Sure. Now we may want to
yeah,
offer a caricature of this particular author.
Yeah,
but it's not fair to do so.
No. So
conscience would bother us.
Yes, exactly. So let's close this out by looking at the last paragraph from this chapter. Dave, you want to read this from
this page 55?
Yes, the last bit here.
Okay. So MacDonald says, this chapter compared the twin visions in Acts 10 and 11 with the dream and portent in Iliad 2 to assess the density and sequence of the parallels. These are criteria 3 and 4, which MacDonald mentions in his introduction. Continues MacDonald, the dream to Cornelius follows the order of motifs in the lying dream of Agamemnon and its imitators. Furthermore, Odysseus interprets the dream as a confirmation of the portent at Aulis. That's the snake and the 9 birds, right? Peter interprets the vision to Cornelius as the key to his vision at Joppa. Just as Agamemnon repeated his dream to his council of elders, Cornelius repeated his experience with the angel to those assembled at Caesarea. Just as Odysseus recalled the portent at Aulis to the army, Peter recounted his vision to the brethren at Jerusalem. The density and sequence of parallel motifs is impressive, even more impressive than most of the imitations of Iliad 2 presented in chapter 3. So that was other dreams from antiquity?
Yes.
But, says MacDonald, mimesis is not the only possible explanation. Chapter 5 will recapitulate the 4 criteria applied thus far and extend the analysis to the last 2, the presence of distinctive traits. That's criterion 5. And the ability of the similarities to explain why the author would have gone to the trouble to recast his model, criterion number 6.
Okay. Yeah.
A little bit of a cliffhanger. I don't know if we want to go into chapter 5 at some point.
Yeah.
After hearing the first 4 criteria and looking at some of the alleged verbal echoes, I'm deeply unconvinced.
I am unconvinced as well. As perhaps a little bit unfair that might be without going through every last bit of his argument. Maybe. I say let's leave it to the audience. If the audience really wants to hear more, let us know.
Right.
And I'd be happy to go through more of this. Yeah.
I can imagine a listener listening to this episode, and we have listeners of all different kinds. Thankfully, I'm very glad about that. Some of them are not religious folks, you might say, Christians like ourselves. And I can imagine a possible objection along these lines. Now, wait, Winkle. Wait, Noe. You're objecting to MacDonald because it threatens your sense that the work of Luke is somehow true or somehow unique in a certain sense. I would disagree with that flatly, because I don't think there's anything wrong with imagining that Luke is working with true historical material and under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit is laying out a history that freely imitates known literary models.
Yeah.
But I don't find it convincing. I don't find that MacDonald has convinced me that this is what Luke actually did.
Right. Exactly. It's that question of deliberateness is where I think he kind of loses the plot. No, I'm with you. The kind of the idea that the only way that Luke's gospel or Acts can be, quote unquote, true, is if it's wholly original, and untouched by anything else around it. To me, that's a non-starter.
Exactly.
So, I mean, I have no problem with the argument that Luke maybe knew his Homer. Like most other educated people, Homer as a literary model was out there, was kind of the way that you did things.
Right.
It's when the argument becomes that he's doing this deliberately for XYZ, that's where I'm going to really need to be convinced.
Yes, much more evidence than has been presented. And I think we can say that our criticisms fall into 2 broad categories. The one I think is the one you articulated both last week and in this episode is why.
Why? What's the motive?
Right. But the second one now that has emerged more to me is the verbal echoes are not persuasive. The description of what constitutes a dream is so broad and general that there isn't a specific and detailed hook between what Luke is doing and what Homer did in Iliad 2.
Exactly. Right. No, I'm with you.
All right.
Yep. I think it's, but hey, we got to get out of here.
Yes, we do.
We're up against the clock. But before we do, Dave, I'm sure there are some listeners who would love to be able to read and translate Latin and Greek like you do. And
you think so?
How do they do that?
Oh, well, that's very nice to hear. Well, I think they should go to latinperdiem.com.
Okay.
latinperdiem.com and check out, please, one of our courses. So we have beginner Latin courses based on Lingua Latina per se illustrata, Roma in Italia est, Italia in Europa est, etc. These courses will take you ab initio, from the ground up. You don't know any Latin, here is an excellent place to start. You can observe me teaching other students, so you get the same classroom experience. And let's face it, I'm a disaster in the classroom. You've sat in on a few of my classes. Oh, man.
Oh, my goodness, man. They were great.
Oh, well, that's kind of good. Without the pressure of deadlines and assignments and so forth. So it's a pretty enjoyable way to learn Latin. You want to learn some Greek? Moss Method, which you can also find at latinperdiem.com. Do you remember the catchphrase, Jeff?
Well, it'll take you from neophyte to erudite.
Excellent.
Yes.
And we meet every Friday for office hours. It's a good time. So a lot of students getting in on that. If you would like to get some free Latin lessons, you think, I want to just sample and see how Noe teaches, go to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Latin per diem. We now have more than 2,300 little 4 and 5 minute Latin and Greek lessons. We're working through Ritchie's Fabulae Faciales right now. Easy Latin stories, stories about Hercules and the Thebans. So check those out. Finally, Jeff, if I can, I would just like to really quickly mention that Calvin's Latin Bible, this app that my team and I have developed, recently we added a modern language support. So if you want to hear me reading the Psalms in Latin, but English is not your first language, and you want to check it against a French, German, Spanish, Korean, or Portuguese translation, you can do that now for free.
Fantastic.
So you're going to want to go to the Google Play Store or to the App Store by Apple and download Calvin's Latin Bible, and it's fully searchable. It was put together by a former Calvin student, was my programmer, and April did a brilliant job.
Fantastic.
So we need to thank some people, Jeff.
Yes, as always, Mishka, our wonderful engineer, turns this stuff around so quickly, takes out all of well, at least most of the gaffes and
the chaff and the nonsense,
the bonks and the clicks. And
right.
So thankful to her. We got these wonderful musicians. We've got Ken Tamplin.
Yes, giving us the bumper music.
And Jeff Sheets, right?
Yeah,
yes.
with the new intro and outro song, Thrill Seeker.
Yeah.
Kansas City guitarist extraordinaire, sharing his music with us so generously. Jeff, what is the thrill here that we're talking about?
The thrill is taking in the classics and keeping them down.
Excellent.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
So for next week, where are we headed?
It's I guess maybe back to Richard.
Maybe back to Richard. I guess we'll just see what the people say. If they say we want more of the MacDonald, keep it coming.
We'll do it.
Maybe we'll press ahead in that. Maybe some Carl Richard, the golden age of the classics in America. It's going to be on the horizon. And of course, Mahru.
Yeah.
I had one gentleman down in North Carolina tell me, I love Mahru.
Really?
Yeah, I want more Mahru.
More Mahru. All right. All right. Well, we can definitely
do that.
We can do that. But in the meantime, if you want to let us know what you want to hear, anything else, you want to shout out, a compliment, a detriment, you can write to Dave at adnauseum.com. Don't forget that V.
If you want to compliment Jeff for his long suffering, putting up with the insufferable co-host, you can write to Jeff at adnauseum.com. Don't forget that there is a V in the word nauseum.
That's right.
And you can pick up a T-shirt, a hat, something like that, ad nauseum themed. Show people you're taking in the classics.
And keeping them down.
Yes, at adnauseum.com, lurch with merch.
Yes.
And so I guess all we have left now, Jeff, is the
gustatory parting shot, which belongs to you this week.
The gustatory parting shot, that's right, from one Duncan Hines. Do you know Mr. Duncan?
Didn't he put ketchup on donuts or something like that?
No, I don't think so. I think he makes cake.
He makes cake?
Yeah.
Oh, Duncan Hines, yeah.
Didn't your mom make cake out of a box sometimes?
Duncan Hines, yes. Now I
My
recognize
mom
it,
did,
right.
and I never knew who Duncan Hines was, but the name was magic.
Yeah.
It was magic to me. When my mom would say, I'm getting out a box of Duncan Hines.
You knew it was going to get
There's something
tasty.
Yeah, something poetic about that almost. And Mr. Duncan Hines, a really interesting individual. I had to look him up on Wikipedia to find out who he was. And I encourage you others to take a look. Interesting fellow. So this is what Duncan Hines says. Nearly everyone wants at least one outstanding meal a day.
Agreed.
I agree. Thanks for listening.
Thanks.